We all have heard the expression, kind of cliche, used to describe certain type of people by saying, "Oh, the poor guys, all they have is money, and that's the only thing left for them to hold on to." Well, this certainly was not exaggeration back in the days of the old Chinese community, when and where the Chinese culture and the social elites would never invite the people with nothing but money to their own private parties and social gatherings, because simply there was too much to catch up to. The debate over philosophies or politics or literature or history, that is quite some ground to cover. But then the time changed, and since the day, some 110 years ago, the last empire came down and fell apart, the Chinese society and the Chinese people, along with the Chinese culture, has transformed. My own grandfather, as an army officer, had his 20 years military career. In the first 20 some years after the Republic started. And then he made himself a good businessman, to the point he owned a chain hotels in 3 provinces in southwestern China. And because of that, my father could afford checking himself into the best private boarding school in the country. From there and on, he was prepared to become a contemporary Chinese intellectual. But then he got caught up in another revolution, and a new state was established, and the Constitution guaranteed one single political party to be the ruling party, which also promoted the political ideology of class struggle for the first 30 years of the history for that state. What was class struggle? Obviously, it wasn't against the ruling class, because the ruling party was the party guaranteed by the Constitution. So the class struggle was basically between the social class, supposedly had absolutely nothing before this very state was established. In other words, the people had absolutely nothing to gain from the old ruling government and entity. And then comparing this specific and huge, massive class to all the other classes, the class struggle theory was basically to promote the massive class who had absolutely nothing and theoretically became the master of the new society, against the classes who used to have something or a lot of things in the old regime prior to the new state or republic. So what was categorized as the way of thinking of the bourgeoisie and the bohemianism, they were not considered healthy. It came to the extreme in the so-called Great Cultural Revolution, lasted for 10 years, during which time the language of social courtesy and protocol, such as good morning, hello, goodbye, thank you, were all dismissed because they were not healthy, they were not the good language to have, let alone all the other cultural heritage from the time before the new republic. They were all eliminated. With 30 years of experiences like this, it certainly created quite an impact on the contemporary Chinese culture as we see it today. On such a social and cultural transformation impact result, what appears to be the Chinese contemporary intellectual today and what they put out as art certainly has quite a distance from the school existed for 700 years or 800 years in the Chinese history. The evolutions and the revolutions certainly disconnected the contemporary Chinese culture from the traditional one, and there was a big cultural discourse from it. And that is what we have to think of when we look at the arts today from the contemporary Chinese artists.